Hey, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, May 30th City Council special meeting. And first, we'll call to order and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll start out with public comment. I would like to remind everyone, we'd like you to keep it under three minutes or less. Remember to be kind and respectful and all of that good stuff. So who would like to start? Go ahead.
Ramey.
Mr. Raymond.
Hi, my name's Tim Ramey, 628 Oak Street, Cannon Beach. I'm excited about this process, excited about the options that our city manager has put in front of us. Excited about funding this project and getting it to the real phase rather than just talking about it phase. I've written quite a bit about options that we have, and I might differ with the city manager's point of view. A couple of them. One, I don't think the city has ever had a $3 million general fund reserve. I'm not sure this is the time to put that into place. And I'm cognizant of the thought that it's a rainy day fund, but I'm also cognizant of the thought that you all have unlimited taxing ability. And if we can maybe raise the food tax a little bit less, if there was a rainy day, you could change the food tax tomorrow after that rainy day and have a revenue source. I also think there's other sources of capital assets. We ought to talk about the RV park. We ought to talk about things that really are not the city's business at all and are worth a lot of money and could be sold. So I want to see it funded. I'd like to see a little more creativity in how we fund it and finish.
Thank you. Next. Is there anybody? Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry. Anna.
I guess nobody else wants to speak. Hannah Bushert, PO Box 97. I trust you all got my letter that I sent in last night, and I hope you had a moment to read it. I just want to reiterate that I feel that lodging tax is already pretty substantial in our community, as well as the food tax. So our visitors do pay a lot of money to help support our community, and I would just like to see that the community is given the opportunity to vote on supporting these projects that they've identified and prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Go ahead.
Deanna Hammond, PO Box 942. Madam Mayor, councilors, thank you for seeing us this evening. So I am concerned about the state of our economy, and I think that we need to be a little more careful with the money that we spend and the money that we have. I am all about taking risks. We bought a business, we've quit our jobs and bought a business and all of these things. I understand taking risks, but it's not, we're taking the risk to bankrupt the city. We don't know what the economy is going to do. And I think until we figure that out, until we have a little bit more, it's a little more solidified, I think that we should try and be a little more conservative with what we have for our rainy day funds. And as you know, that I would be extremely opposed to raising the food tax, and I'm not a proponent of raising the law. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone online that would like to raise your hand if you'd like to speak? if you're online.
Hand up.
Okay, Dave?
Dave, can you unmute yourself?
Kind of a bonehead with technology too. So I'm a tribal member. I'm on tribal council for Classic Nehalem Confederated Tribes, and I've been following this project from afar. I live over in Bend, or I would be there. And it's just, I've been kind of in amazement at the plans that I've seen for the center there in Nacoos. And I just wanted to say, it seems, I understand the fiscal conservatism and you got to be responsible with money. I get all of that. I'm a business owner. I've been doing that for a long, long time. So I'm very cognizant of that side of the equation. It just seems to me that if you take out the Native American part of this, you kind of take the heart and soul of it out. I think this could be a big draw to the local community. I know there's a lot of support for the tribe there, which has always been very heartwarming to us. And I think taking that out, that part of the project out to save some money, kind of takes the heart out of it, seems to me. I'm a little biased and I would be the first to admit that. And I'm not in your community, so yeah, you might see me as an outside voice. I don't know, but it just seems like a very amazing project that the community could really build around and do something with the way it's designed. So for what it's worth, those are my comments.
Can we
Dave?
get your last name?
I was just gonna say that. Yeah. Could we get your last name and your mailing address, please?
Yes, it's Stowe, STOWE. And mailing address is 20216 Sawyer, SAWYER, Reach Court, Bend, Oregon, 97703.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? No?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh. Okay. Dick.
Hi, my name is Dick Bash, 1126 Avenue F, Seaside, Oregon. And I'm wanting to, on behalf of many people, want to thank the city council for asking us to introduce ourselves and you wanting to get to know us better and to know and learn, anxious to learn the history of that property. It's been the home for many students as well as for centuries. Our relatives, our literate ancestors. I get the fiscal responsibility totally. But I feel so confident that there are tourists, people across our continent and Europe who want to get to know the culture of the American Indian, the Native Americans. As I had mentioned before, there's an organization, American Indian Alaska Natives Tourism Association, that works with a Canadian counterpart, and they bring tourists from Europe and from all over to tour and to get to sites where there are Native American stories, things to learn from the past. And with those people come dollars. And We are already on their website. And they're just waiting for more information to fill it in and make it more robust. I think we have all worked designing the native garden, designing a facility that can tell not just the Native American story, but the Lewis and Clark story and the story of that school. And I think we've all worked very hard. And I think I really just hope that we are able to support it and to fund it and to build it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, one up.
My name is Matt Verka. I lived in Cannon Beach a year now. Moved up here from California. To Dick's point, Dave's point online. And I think what I learned in history was a meeting of what they call the rendezvous. And a rendezvous incorporated mountain men, Indians. And I think that this center or the school could bring that and tie that all together, obviously with a Lewis and Clark history. And it would be a place of celebration, a place of business, commerce, and a place of education. And I think that if we are able to tie that all together, it benefits everybody. It benefits the city, it benefits the residents, it benefits tourists. So if we could focus on that theme, I think that it would be greatest for everybody that comes into Cannon Beach. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to learn that. I've talked to Gary on the beach and I've learned, I didn't even know that was a communal place for Lewis and Clark and the Indians. And I think that would be a great spot to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
No, but you're getting up to speak, Lisa. No. Okay, last chance. Okay, thank you. So first on our discussion item is the elementary school rejuvenation project funding.
And police station.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the whole thing.
I'm talking about.
Talk about the whole package.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Several scenarios will be shown tonight for funding the debt service for the Cannon Beach Elementary School rejuvenation and the City Hall Police Station project. Each of the presentations will show the debt service requirements for the projects as designed and the identified funding sources. Some end with a statement, additional debt service required. For the sake of this funding exercise, primary sources for additional sources of explored include the TLT and/or property taxes, reserves, and transfers. There are some funding devices that can contribute small amounts to reduce capital expenses or debt service, and they're discussed at the end of this report. There's another option besides additional funding to deal with, which deals with matching the scope to the funding to reduce the scope. It's possible with a CBE project, and it'll be up to the council to decide if that's in the best interest of the project in the city. However, the City Hall and police station projects are largely based on headcount and task requirements. It's much more difficult to reduce the scope of those projects as they are designed to address some of the problems and results of overcrowding and personnel safety issues that are present in the current structure. Every individual position and workstation that will be part of those facilities are included in the facility program, which has been presented to council and is available for everyone to view on the city's website. If someone's interested in reducing the project scope and they can convince the council that a particular space or position is not needed, it will be possible to reduce the scope of that facility
by the requirement of that position or space. The report will start with discussing Cannon Beach and City Hall Police Station using the TLT at 1.5%, TLT at 2%, property taxes only, and following by alternative sources for rounding figures for the additional debt service required. First slide, Rusty. First one, right? Okay, talking about the transient lodging tax at 1.5%. This is more of a summary, and the specifics will be provided in the subsequent slides. An increase in the TLT of 1.5% will cover all of the debt service for the Cannon Beach Elementary Rejuvenation Project. The 70% portion of the 1.5% TLT would generate $721,875. After using those funds to cover the additional debt service required, which comes out to be $169,000, you apply the $721,000 to that, there would be $553,125 available in TLT funds to help fund operations and maintenance of the Cannon Beach Elementary project. The remainder of the 70% TLT funds would not be usable for the City Hall Police Department project. The 30% allowable from the 1.5% TLT increase is usable for general purposes, should contribute $310,000 towards the debt service of the City Hall and Police Station project. Should you go again?
Could I interrupt you for a minute? I think there might be some people in the audience who don't understand the 30 and 70%.
Okay.
Could you explain that?
Yes, when there's another 1% of a transient lodging tax imposed or TLT imposed, it's split into two portions, 30% and 70%. The 70% is usable for tourism-related facilities or tourism promotion. The 30% is allowed for general purposes. So you can see that because the Cannon Beach Elementary project is intended to be a tourism-related facility, 70% of that can be applied to it. The 30% can be applied to the City Hall project. So while it's split, you can see that the lion's share of $700 and something thousand, I forgot the number, $721,000 would be able to go to the 70% or the tourism-related facilities. The $310,000 would be the 30%. That makes sense to everybody? Yes, Amy.
Who mandates the split?
State.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. All right, the Cannon Beach Elementary, the debt service for $12 million, $750,000 per year. We currently have a loan and we're paying $250,000 in debt service now. So the additional debt service requirement is $500,000. And I want to make a note that the $250,000 is only a portion of the amount that is collected, and that there's still $231,000 that remains available in the county TLT. Go ahead. We got the number down to 500 in the previous slide. And then we have the residual from the county TLT, which I talked about, which is $231,000. That means the additional debt service required is $269,000. City Council has spoken about, and the Tourism and Arts Commission has talked about reallocating $100,000 per year from the TLT, from the TAC fund, which is made up of TLT dollars, for $100,000, which means the additional debt service requirement would be $169,000. As I mentioned earlier, if a 1.5% TLT increase were to be imposed, that it would generate $721,000 in the 70%. We apply the $721,000 to the $169,000, It would actually be $553,125 remaining from that 70%. Next one, please. The City Hall Police Station. As I mentioned earlier, the transient lodging tax increase of 1.5% could generate $310,000 towards the debt service for the City Hall and Police Station. The remaining $345,000, which I'll talk about is how we get there, will have to come from other sources. So we start with the total debt service for $25 million project of $1.555 million. The city portion, which is split between the fire district and the city's portion is supposed to be $900,000 for the first year of the PFT. So we subtract the 900,000 from the 1.555 million, and it comes out to $655,000 remaining. We apply the 30% of the 1% or the 310,000. That means that there's an additional $345,000 to be generated. I can talk about potential sources of that later on in the presentation. Go next one, Rusty. Cannon Beach Elementary, if the transient lodging tax was to go to 2%, increase of the TLT to 2% would cover all of the debt service for the Cannon Beach Elementary rejuvenation project. After funding the $169,000 from the 70% of the 2%, or $962,500, there would also be $793,750 available in TLT funds to help fund operations and maintenance. It would also be available for some projects that the city has on the books but has not had funding for, including the Parks Master Plan. The 30% of the 2% of the TLT increase allowable for general purposes would result in a contribution of $412,500 towards the debt service of the City Hall Police Station project. Next. So, I'm sorry, could you go back? I don't know where that other slide went. Okay, so that gets us another $100,000 farther than we were when we had a $350,000, I believe, amount to be made up. Okay, next one. Cannon Beach Elementary at 2%. Debt service again, $750,000, less the existing debt service, and we've already been through this once, results in a $500,000. There's $231,250 remaining available. The $231,000 from the 500 is $269,000. We've already talked about reallocating $100,000 in TAC funding, and the additional debt service required is $169,000. 70% of 2% is $962,500, and so using that to pay the $169 leaves $793,500. At 2%, the City Hall Police Station project, the 30% of the 2% would generate $412,500 towards the debt service. The remaining $242,500 would have to come from other sources. And to just go up through this arithmetically, the total debt service for $25 million is $1.555 million. City portion of the prepared food tax is $900,000. Additional debt service required is $655,000. We apply 30% of the additional 2%, which is all that we would be allowed, is $412,000, and that brings the additional debt service requirement down to $242,500. Those were the options that we had if we were to use TLT. We also looked at a property tax only option. And this option does not incorporate any TLT into the funding, so the numbers you see are going to be different. The debt service for the $12 million project is $750,000 a year, minus the existing debt service, $250,000. Additional debt service required is $500,000. We still have the $231,250 forward. And that gets us down to $269,000. And if we talk about reallocating some of the TAC funding, it's $169,000. Now, there's no TLT funds here for this. So the $169,000 in annual debt service is 15 cents per $1,000 for a $500,000 evaluation house. That means it's $75 annually for 30 years to pay that use property tax. And there is no residual funding as there is in the TLT. Go on. The police station, the debt service for 25 million is 1.555 million. City portion of the prepared food tax is 900,000. Additional debt service required is 655,000. Again, there's no other funding source in terms of the TLT. So the amount that is required for the property tax to make up that debt service is 58.4 cents per thousand for $500,000 in valuation, for $292 annually for 30 years. And I actually had the foresight to write down the total and think it was $367 a year. I thought my answer was going to be, it was on a different piece of paper, but that didn't work out that way. All right, next one. Now, annual debt service required can be in the form of reduction of capital costs of the project. Means you take a sum of money and you apply it towards the capital, and then you never have to pay the debt service on it. Or identifying sources where an amount can reasonably be relied upon for 30 years to contribute to a debt service payment. And that one I'm calling towards debt service. Next one. This is a one I think Tim had mentioned that there's a $3 million balance, or there will be in the 23-24 budget in the general fund reserve. If the entire amount was dedicated to offset the capital costs, the debt service would be offset by $200,000. And if you remember, we had like $260,000 was the amount that was left to be funded after the prepared food tax. So $200,000 would come off of that amount, but we would have no emergency funds accumulated. I get a little bit antsy when somebody keeps calling it the rainy day fund. It's for a much worse situation than a rainy day fund. Involved in hurricanes, and everybody's used to me saying that seen situations where cities paid $3 million in 3 days just to get trees out of the way. So you have to have those funds, and you have to be able to write checks. FEMA will not be here for a long time. So that's my spiel. Next one, please. And then there's long-term and short-term. That's combined with the TAC funds. The short-term, I'm sorry, the longer term, or using the capital, is that there is $756,000 in the reserves. If we were to take the entire balance, we could reduce the debt service only for the Cannon Beach Elementary project by $50,000. If we were to use the TAC funds for the 70% towards the 1% TLT allocation, and use $100,000, for example, for debt service for the Cannon Beach Elementary, we could do that if we were willing to commit to it for a period of 30 years. It's also possible we commit $200,000 towards it. But I think there was only $169,000 that would be required to be able to move forward once we collected the difference in the property tax or in the TLT. Next one. General fund reserves. This year, we are going to get to $3 million. And in the past 5 years, we've contributed between $500,000 and $700,000 to build that up to the $300,000. It's possible that, and we did that by contributing, if we were to reduce the number from $7,000 to $500,000 to $300,000 to $500,000 annually, to start building it up more slowly, we could make $200,000 to $400,000 available for the City Hall debt service. It would not be required at this point for anything for the Cannon Beach Elementary. Next one. RV park reserves. We have $200,000 to $300,000 a year we've transferred to the general fund from the RV park. Consideration could be used to giving some or all of these funds to offset the debt service of the City Hall Police Station. Again, a general fund operation. Okay, I think that's it. And any questions from the council? Early on, I mentioned that we could look at possible scope changes as another way to reduce costs. That's why we have the staff from Emmerich, Bremick and CETA here in case you have any questions from an architecture standpoint or a construction manager standpoint. Okay.
Would like to start.
I wanted to say that, thank you, Bruce. It's very clear. Everyone should understand we're looking at annual amounts when you're talking about those money. We're talking about annual events that are being applied to debt service and both 30-year debts, correct?
Correct, sir.
And at what percentage are we calculating those numbers?
I don't know what, we asked our financial advisor to calculate them, and it was based on what was going on that day, but it's been fluctuating. So I can't tell you exactly what it is. I can tell you that there might be a little bit of, we might have a little bit of flexibility in making a decision in that the council for the City Hall project and City Hall Police Station project this year set aside $900,000 for us to be able to pay the architects and the construction manager until we were to get a bond issue. The budget that we hope will be approved in the next couple of weeks has another $900,000 there. We think that that can carry us through to January to April of 2024. So sometime in there, and we're going to need to have a bond issue, but we have some time. And I know it's always dangerous when you're talking about timing the market, but we don't have to make a decision in order to say we can start work next week. We have some time as long as those funds remain available. And we already have a bond issue for a portion of the City Hall, of the Cannon Beach Elementary project. And so we're good there for that time period also.
And when you say bond issue, you mean issuing bonds from money that we have used to purchase those bonds, not an election bond issue.
Yeah, and I keep getting that wrong. I'm sorry, Nathan.
Just want to make sure people don't
Yes.
don't think this is a
I
property.
want to make sure we're
tax.
all on the same page and understanding this.
And I must have missed a note when I was looking at my notes in that if the city does want to use the property tax option, we will have to go to a referral. And that next referral is in November of 23. And at this point, I understand that there's at least 2 other referrals that will probably be going forward from the fire district. And I don't know if anybody else that, might impact us would be looking for going to a referral. But it would require a vote of the people.
In November of 23.
23, yes.
And when would that money become available to us if it did pass? When would those property taxes become available to the city to use?
Lori, I'd ask you that question, and does it become right after the referral? That because we have the authority to borrow the money at that point, that the money could be available then as opposed to a year. We wait for it to collect it?
Once the voters approve it,
Yes,
then we can move forward
okay.
right after that.
Yes. That answer your question, Ian?
Thank you.
Brandon, do you have any thoughts?
Other than, are we at the point where we're discussing?
Which way we would like to see it go?
Yeah.
Thank you for the musical.
Oh, this must be something good, Randy.
Really.
That sounded like angels on the trumpet.
Well, I'll try to live up to that. I guess if I had a preference, I'd like to see it split between the hotel room tax and property tax and trying to get some money from the budget as has been laid out in Bruce's proposal.
And when you say from the budget, you mean TAC funds? Or reserves?
It could come from any of those. I'd just like to discuss it ahead of time.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've heard a lot about shared responsibility and some of the public feedback and I like that idea. And I think we're getting so close, but I think TLT is going to be in play. I think the existing TLT that's in play that Bruce has shown us, the additional county taxes that would go to the school, the tourism and arts fund taxes, which would also go to the school project. I think for the city hall, the reducing general fund reserve contributions would again bring down what's required. The RV park reserve would again bring down what's required for annual debt service. And I personally would like to see our community have a chance to support this. So I feel like all of those things, and I'd kind of like to just talk about City Hall and Police Department, because that's the real challenge here. The raising the TLT is going to give us that 30%, which is not a huge pile of money, but by reducing some of these reserves, that would leave a balance that residents could contribute to this at a very modest portion, I think. I mean, I would think, I didn't do the math on all this stuff, but applying all those things to City Hall, Cannon Beach funding would probably leave us with a general obligation bond that probably would not exceed $100 per 500,000. And we sat here in a meeting and listened to public comment about how residents would be willing to fund having a police department and emergency operations center out of the tsunami zone. And I think the best of all worlds is to approach this from the shared responsibility angle.
I understand what you're saying. I'm, however, am not as confident as you about that I've heard from a lot of community members who are willing to raise the property taxes. I don't know. I mean,
You have or
I have
haven't?
not. I've been here at the meetings. There has not been very many people, as far as I'm concerned, who have expressed an interest in that. So I'm, it does have to go to a vote. I'm concerned. What if it doesn't pass?
Then I think we have other options is my feeling. But I feel like giving residents the opportunity, and I don't know, I didn't see anybody stand up and say, no, I don't want my taxes going for it. I think Hannah showed us something that was very useful to show us how our current property taxes were almost the lowest of anybody in adjoining counties. Were subsidized by tourism. So I just like the idea of this being shared responsibility, although I'll admit tourism is going to carry the majority of this when you really look at it. I'll mention one of my other concerns about going too far with the TLT, and that's that huge pile of money that Bruce was showing. I think up to close to $900,000 in excess tourism related funds to be spent. Now, I know we can find a way to spend them. And, you know, some ways that would, I think, enhance the community. I'm not that comfortable raising that much money for a fund that we don't know how we're going to spend. You know, maybe as we get down the line and decide that when Bruce talked about the parks master plan, he's not talking about creating a plan or funding a plan. He's talking about executing projects for our community, the parks, trails, plazas, public spaces that would qualify for those funds. But I would sure rather see us discuss what those projects are before we just create a big pile of money.
Well, I don't
Yeah, I'm not.
understand what you're talking about, the big pile of money.
I'm talking about when you raise the lodging tax 1.5 or 2%. If you do the math, we have so much more beyond what we need to complete the school project.
But we also have to operate the school project. And that was what that other,
Even
Other
at
funds we're going-
the 1.5%, there was $500,000 for management and maintenance.
Mhm.
And I think we should also get creative with our management solutions and look at some existing lodging tax options with that. I think there are some where we could be creative. But I would think that 500,000, it even sounds like a lot to me for the management and maintenance.
We don't know the answer to that yet, really.
Yeah, we're
That's why we're trying to make
we
a
are
committee.
for the horse a little bit,
Right, yeah, yeah.
as we'll get to in the second half of this meeting.
Bruce, on the RV reserve, park reserves, what? I know it says that cities regularly transferred 200 to $300,000 from the RV park revenues to the general fund. What would we give up if we used those reserves for this project?
I have to ask Lori. Did you hear the question, Lori?
I think it's just a point about funding the other essential programs of the government. I don't know, we may end up with.
Can't see you, Lori. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Lori, you might come up to the podium.
Come up here.
Thank you.
So right now, the transfer that we made supports the general fund as a whole and all the programs in it, these emergency management planning. And so we don't sit there and say, well, this much goes to this program and this much goes to program. It just is all there available for, the budgeting purposes that we do annually. And so it's hard to say, maybe, and then a lot of that too, we set aside money to go into the reserve fund that Bruce spoke about. So it's just like a decision-making process where if you were to come up short, then you would make decisions about maybe cutting something. Does that help? I mean,
When I'm talking about that there were multiple places that we could take 200,000, 300,000, something like that. I would not be in any way recommending that we use all of those because that would take away flexibility from future councils. And I think that we should be sparing doing that just to go ahead and make it to cover the debt service and then rely on other sources to pay the lion's share of it. I think it'd be tempting to go ahead and say, oh, we can go ahead and do this, but we'd be tying our folks that are coming after us in a way that I would not appreciate if I was one of them.
But we're also not talking about spending our reserves. We've got $3 million in general fund reserves. We're talking about now that we've got $300 million in general fund reserves, we're talking about slowing the contributions to the general fund reserve. The RV park I believe the reserves are like $350,000 existing, and we would only be slowing down the contributions to that reserve. So we'd still be building reserves. We're just repurposing some of the money that has been going to those. Is that clear? Is that accurate?
It's mostly accurate.
Okay.
Because some of the reserves are being set aside for future capital projects. And so those, as the facility gets older, we would be needing funds to be able to go ahead and do work there. So I'd just be a little bit careful on that.
Yeah.
Taken from that particular location.
And paving project at the RV park was one of those. That's an example of that.
And, anytime you have a pool in a building, both of those are deteriorating pretty quickly for you. And a water system and a sewer system.
Bruce, in your example on the transient lodging tax at 1.5% for the city hall and police station portion of it, so the additional debt service required at $345,000,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And then unfortunately on that side, you didn't have an example about how to make up that through property taxes. So just doing a little extrapolating on the one that you did do that with the 2%.
So yeah, try to stay away from that, but I may not have. This is for the police station. Oh,
There was a residual
Yes.
additional debt service required at 242.
345. It's elsewhere on the report. I asked for a number of those. 345 is $153 for a $500,000 house, 30 years.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I didn't put it on.
How
the
much
page.
did you say?
345. I'm sorry, $345,000, $153 annually, 30 years.
Well, I'm going to express my opinion. I hope and pray that our community will support a new city hall. And I mean, we've been talking about this for many, many, many years. You look around at the facility that we're asking our city employees to work in, and it's not what I want for City Hall. And so I think the balanced approach is probably the way to go. Increase the lodging tax, have a property tax bond election. I say that right? Nancy?
Yeah, general bond, yeah.
General bond election. Use some TAC funds and look at spending some of the reserves, not all of them. And I want it all. I want the rejuvenation project of the elementary school to go ahead as it is planned. Maybe we'll need to do it in phases. Do the inside stuff first and then the outside things later. I want a police station and an emergency management in a safe location at the cash site. And then I want a centralized, beautiful city hall on Gower Street. And I think we can do it. Every time we've had something that needed to be done in this town, we get together and we get it done. And I want that to happen now. And I think we can do it. But we all have to work together and have the same visions.
And I agree with you, Barb, about having a balanced approach. I don't. Looking, we know this is a tourism-based economy in our town. We also know that we have the lowest TLT tax rate for any town in the local area other than Gearhart. I think it was Gearhart. I don't believe that raising the TLT tax even to the 2% maximum that was suggested, or by the 2% maximum, would negatively impact the number of tourists who come and use hotels, motels, and short-term rentals in the city whatsoever. And I also think that as long as we have the lowest rate in this area, if you think about what it does, in effect, is it subsidizes our lodging industry. I know the lodging industry it pays for so much of what happens in Cannon Beach, but they also use resources in Cannon Beach. So it's a two-way street. And so I think that raising it so that it is commensurate with other communities in the area makes total sense. And floating a general bond, I guess that's something we could think about doing. I'm not sure how it would go. And that makes me nervous.
Well, we have the lowest or close to the lowest TLT right now. That's
right.
accurate. We also have the lowest or closest to it property tax.
That's true.
I just don't want to see us go from lowest to highest like that.
For what? Lowest to highest for what? For which one?
By just raising the TLT to whatever covers the project, we essentially move.
Raising it 2% doesn't make us the highest.
It will put us right at the top.
It'll put us right equal with most of the other
I
communities.
don't have those numbers in front of me, but
I mean, that's how I recall the chart we were given. Do you have it, Bruce?
I don't have it in front of me.
It put us right smack. My recollection is it put us right smack in line with the other communities.
I see even a 1% TLT increase finishes the Cannon Beach Elementary School project. It's
No,
done.
it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
1.5 does.
Well, I'm sorry.
1.5.
I'm saying 1% would get us there. It just doesn't give us that bigger pile of $500,000 to deal with the management afterwards.
But part of that money
Tell me if
also goes to the city hall.
Yeah, you've got the 30%.
The 30%. So it reduces that amount too.
It would reduce that amount. I would personally like to see that. I would like to see at 1%, we do finish City Hall at the full beautiful magic project that we've looked at.
You mean Cannon Beach Elementary?
Thank you. Yeah, Cannon Beach Elementary. Along with using the existing TLT, the $100,000 from Tourism and Arts Fund, even without affecting TLT beyond that. But then with that reduced general fund reserve, by slowing our contributions to that, by slowing our contributions to the RV park reserve, we're all adding to getting close to fulfilling the debt service on City Hall and Police Department. And I would think that last portion could look at a general fund bond obligation, and it would not be a menacing amount for local residents. In fact, I think $100 a year seems like a very reasonable insurance policy to move our police department and emergency operations center out of the tsunami inundation zone.
I'm not seeing how your numbers with the 1% don't make any sense. I'd have to really see, because I need to see your figures.
Well,
With a 1%.
let's go back to transient lodging taxes at 1.5%.
Mhm.
If we raise at 1.5%,
It's in here.
In here.
it's page 2 of our,
Page 2 and 3.
all we've essentially done there. let's see, the additional debt service required, first of all, is $500,000. If we apply the residual $231,000 county TLT, it lowers it to 269. If we reallocate the tourism and arts funding by $100,000, it reduces it to 169. And then we get 70% of 1%. If we do 70% of 1.5%, it's 721,000. When what we need is 169 to finish the construction.
But
So I would think at 1%, we would still finish the construction. We just wouldn't have as big a balance that's here indicated as unallocated TLT funding of 553,125.
how much would it be?
Can you do that, Bruce?
While he's doing that,
Lori?
while you're doing that, I'll say,
Okay,
I agree with Barb on most everything. And I think we really do need to think seriously about a 1.5%, because we frankly don't know what the situation is going to be when we do start issuing bonds, or buying bonds. So I'd like to have that kind of in reserve there. And we have management costs. We'll have management and maintenance costs. And I don't know how much that's going to cost. We'll find that out when the advisory committee starts looking at various ways of managing. So I still would rather go with the 1.5. The only thing I don't agree with Barbara on, and she knows that, is that I think the city hall should go with the police station up on the cash site, which would save us $3 million at least. And since the last tsunami was January 26, 1700, and experts have said that tsunamis happen, big tsunamis happen every 330 years. We're getting very close. I'd like to stay safe and keep that city hall up at the cash site. I do think we should have a balance. And I think if we do have a general obligation bond election in November, if it doesn't pass, and I agree with Lisa, we heard from a few people in the audience the last time we met, but we haven't heard from everybody in the city about how they feel. And I remember when the city tried to pass the Ecola Forest Reserve, when they did a survey before the election, the survey said 70% were going to approve it. They won by 12 votes. So just because 5 people here in the audience say they're going to vote, they would vote for property taxes to fund a city hall, doesn't mean that everybody in the city will do that. But we do have options if it doesn't pass.
yes.
So I'm willing to ask voters to do that.
So my fear of having an election and with having City Hall and police station at the cash site is that would be the issue. It would not be a property tax issue, it would be a location issue. And people would vote against the whole thing because they want City Hall to remain in Midtown at Gower Street.
I've heard from people who've told me that they agreed with me because they're worried about the tsunami,
Yeah,
and destruction. I mean, any natural disaster, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, it can go either way, I think.
Bruce?
Other alarm bells going off. If we are to say that we are going to hold off until we get a referral, and that would be in November. That's 6 months away. That means unless we are told to take the risk of spending the money and going ahead and keeping the project on schedule, which if it doesn't pass, I don't know if it would happen. Then we are looking at a little bit over $1 million in costs, not now, but at the end of the project, because we will have waited that time. And I'm talking about both projects, all 3 projects. That the city hall, we've already been told that the city hall goes up, city hall police station goes up like $600,000 a month at the end. not now. Or when we finally get to the bids. And just using that as an example, it's about half as much to do the Cannon Beach Elementary. I'm using $500,000. So that puts us about $1.1 million in cost. So waiting is not a zero cost. So know that we will increase the cost of the project that much. And then there's a concern if it doesn't pass. Or what are we going to do then? Are we going to go to the TLT? Are we going to continue on so that we don't necessarily lose those dollars? Or we spend a bunch of dollars in case it fails? So those are some things that I think that are real that we're not considering yet. And it's not a fault of you folks. I'm just saying that we've been thinking ahead on it a little bit.
Well, I don't know how we're going to do this now, but I wish somebody could find that chart that you released for us showing the TLT tax comparison for the various communities. Because my recollection of it, I looked at it really, I have everything on paper. So
Okay, good. Thank you.
if we could put it up, because I could be wrong, but my recollection is that raising the TLT tax 2% would put us squarely in line with other communities other than Gerhart.
Did you say you found it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Detective.
Bruce, to follow that line of thought. So say that the just for discussion purposes, that the transient lodging tax was at 2%. But that still leaves the debt service of $242,500 per year.
Mhm.
What would be your suggestion to fund that?
I would probably make the decision based on how the RV park was doing and how the general fund was doing. And between the two, take that $240,000 because we're taking more than that from both of them now,
Okay.
or at least recently. I don't know about the past history.
And that's fine. I see that as a viable option. What is less palatable to you if we were to do it at 1.5% and then have to do the same thing for the $342,000?
I think. I'm sorry, would you mind asking that last question? Because I was kind of going to Gary's question, which I think is around $500,000. If you could just do 1%. And I just split it 3 ways and then multiply times 2. The
You're
1.5.
talking about $500,000 would be left unallocated TLT funding?
No, $500,000 is what you would have. And then you split the 70 and 30, if it's a 1%.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm sorry, now we can try to cover yours.
I'll use the exact numbers.
Okay,
So at 2%, you have the additional debt service required at $242,500. And you just said that we could make that up through, I'll call it general fund,
or RV park,
and or RV park.
right?
So that number at 1.5%, the additional debt service required is at 345.
Mhm.
So you've got $100,000 delta.
Mhm.
So my question is it that much more of an imposition to do the same thing with the general fund and the RV park reserves? Do we just not get there?
We would get there. But if it's possible to do the project without reducing those reserves and reducing that flexibility, I would prefer it.
Okay. All right.
I want to follow up on your comment too about increasing costs. If council decides at the appropriate time in the near future that police station, emergency operations center is going to go on the Tovana cash site and City Hall is going to be here, our funding would essentially be in place to start up there. Is that accurate?
We would be able to go for a period of time and start those designs. The concern is that that money would be at risk if the referral doesn't pass.
It's $9 million to complete the police department emergency operations center. Isn't that already
Well,
there with the prepared food tax and the other sources that we're looking at? Certainly there with the additional, if we raise the lodging taxes 1%.
Okay, if you raise it to 1%, I've not looked at that particular number, but I think my impression is that we would be leaving ourselves short for being able to manage the facility, and then we would be scrambling, trying to find.
Talking about Cannon Beach Elementary.
Yes,
Okay,
then we would be trying to go ahead and find maybe $500,000, I don't know. And so then we would take more from the RV and more from the general
all right.
fund.
Well, but my question is about police department and emergency operations center.
It depends what you do with the other ones.
$9 million. Do we not have the existing funds to move on that?
On the 9 million? Just for the police station?
Yes. You're talking about the increasing costs. Essentially, we would be able to start rolling with that project if council made the decision that they're going to be in two different locations.
If you were to roll any decision you make, put them together, take them apart, whatever, any decision that you make that allows us to keep up with our current schedule, you don't have that risk of that additional fees. If we wait until we find out about the election results, then I think you're looking at those fees. You're gonna get the same product for another $1 million.
But at least being concerned about increasing costs of 25 million is a little different than increasing cost of 14 million for City Hall.
If City Hall is done, if City Hall stays in schedule,
Yeah.
City Hall is $110,000 a month. And I split that for the cost because it's half the cost to do the Cannon Beach Elementary.
I guess
I came up with those numbers.
the point I'm making is it's not the $25 million. We don't have to slow all the projects down if we had to wait for a general obligation bond.
You don't slow them down. But if it doesn't pass,
Yes,
you have to know what your plan is going to be.
and I think we should make that plan.
But it is possible to avoid that cost. With the risk.
So it looks like if we if you look at the chart there, raising the TLT tax by 2% would bring us to 12.5, correct? Am I right in that?
Yeah.
Okay,
It would only be one place with,
no, if we raised it by 2.
It would go to 10.5.
It's currently.
No, it's now at 10.5.
County and the state.
Right now, it's 10.5. Yeah,
The city is at 8%, but
Yes.
that doesn't
Right.
include the
so the
1% and the 1.5%.
Right.
Yes, I think we want to be concerned with the last.
right,
that would be
the total. 10, no, there's a 13 ahead of us. There's another 13. There's a 12.5, another 12.5, another 12.5, and a 14. So there's, it put us pretty much in the middle.
I might be looking at this wrong. It looks like we would be second lowest.
Lower?
Second lowest.
No, we wouldn't be the
Look at the
second lowest.
last column.
Because the last column would be 12.5 if we raised our city tax by 2%. Because what is now in the first column, 8% would be 10. Right? And so that would move the total TLT tax to 12.5.
we'd be right in the middle.
We'd be right in the middle.
But I'm looking at the last column. Which is.
That's without an increase, Bruce. The last column is no increase.
Okay, all right, I got you.
Okay, yeah. It took me a while to figure it out too.
I think we should take the 14.5 out of the calculation. I don't think Warrenton is quite comparable in lodging tax revenues to
What?
where we're at. The highest one is Warrenton,
Yeah,
14.5. I don't think we're comparable to Warrenton.
I'm looking at numbers. I'm not looking at quality of towns or what goes on in a town.
Of lodging.
Yeah,
Of lodging.
quality of lodging. I'm looking,
Yeah, that's not-
I'm looking completely just at numbers. And I'm seeing that 12.5 puts us about the middle. That's all I'm saying.
It would put two higher than what we have. It would put, if you don't count Warrenton, sorry. Sorry, Warrenton. 13.5. Astoria and Newport would be the ones that were higher than us.
And Warrington, and then would be the same as Seaside, Tillamook, and Rockaway Beach. We would be the same. So that, unless I'm not seeing something here, that puts us in the middle pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, we agree with you.
Okay,
Yep.
that's all I'm saying. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be in the middle. Why we should be one of the lowest. I don't understand that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. I can't think, I'm trying to think of a rational reason.
It does give us options if we need to do something in the future, as opposed to going ahead and pushing them up and creating this new fund of $800,000. I can't remember the figure, that we don't have a plan to spend.
I think,
I don't,
well,
800,000.
don't know if it'll be the whole amount. But I think if there was $500,000 left, that's $500,000 we don't have to find later on when it comes time to operate, because it's going to cost money to operate.
You're still coming back to the Cannon Beach School.
Right? It's still there. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't, I don't think you can, unless you say, we're not going to do this project, or we're going to pay cash for this project, that you can think about this without looking at all of the pieces.
You're saying we might need $800,000 to operate the elementary school.
I say, I don't have any idea, but I know it's going to be more than zero.
Okay,
And if it's zero and we have to come up with that amount, we're going to be looking to the same places we say that have got some money left over every year. And then the next, whenever that council is there, and some of y'all may still be on it, that will be a difficult situation that we will have left them in.
and at 1.5%, it's 553,000 for
Right.
management.
Right.
So it's not nothing. It's 558,000. And I don't know, that's the math I was asking for, is what would a 1% leave us in
Okay.
unallocated TLT funding?
That would be around $500,000, and I will do some division. Looks, I think, well, that's 30%, so I would have to do the other side of it. Like $350,000 less.
And it would also take money away from the 30% towards the
Right.
city hall.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it does.
so it's
Raise it.
reducing it.
But it's a much smaller portion that,
Well, and it does reduce it though. And I'm saying that $500,000 that you just see as this big pool of money, it could be used for parks and trails and all kinds of things that the city could use. So it doesn't necessarily only go towards, the function of the elementary school. If that turns out to be a much lesser number, which we don't know at this point, then that money could be for other really beneficial things for our tourists and our community. I mean, so if you're acting like it's a poison pool of money, I don't see what's wrong with it, having that reserve.
okay,
No, I'm just asking. I'm asking what,
it seems unnecessary to me. again, at 1%, we would have Cannon Beach entry done. And maybe only 200 some thousand, I think is what you just said. But and then a slightly smaller portion going to City Hall Police Department.
Not slightly. I mean,
And then using the reserve, reducing the reserve contributions for the general fund reserve, RV park reserve. That leaves a pretty small portion for a general obligation bond.
which may or may not, I'm,
I would be happy to be the one that promotes a general obligation bond for people in this community to take some pride in them being part of the solution of a police department, emergency operations facility out of the tsunami zone. That's
right. And you have to also remember that there are people in this community who live on a fixed income, i.e. Social Security, and have trouble meeting their property taxes as it is right now.
Not to
So-
mention the people who in the hospitality industry who also have.
yeah, they'd be paying another chunk because of their properties. In
Well,
fact,
the
they'd
rent would go
probably be paying
If they weren't,
a much more major portion of it. But I think it would be, yes, probably close to, and maybe less than $100 per year per $500,000 assessed value.
And there's incremental percentage raise each year anyway. So, I mean, I guess I'm not, I still am waiting for rationale for that makes sense to me for not making it 2% or at least 1.5. I'm just not hearing it, except for this pool of money that you're concerned about. I've never heard of anyone being worried about having a bank account. You know, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me when there's so many things that we could be doing with that money to improve our community.
Well, let's make a plan for that. And let's not raise the money and then say, okay, let's find a good way to spend this. We want to make a plan, great.
No, I think we're all in agreement that if we're going to do that, we will have a plan.
Right. We're not going to just spend it. We'll have to make, but we can't make a plan now.
we're waiting, I mean, like I said before, we have the advisory committee who's going to look at how the facility is going to be managed, how much it's going to cost. I mean, I've looked at preliminary figures that Deb has put together for us, and it's can be costly to manage a facility depending on what you do with it. And we also have other things that we could use that money for, but we can't really put a plan together until we can get the advisory committee to come back to us with
That's
recommendations.
going to be a much smaller portion of this potential $793,500 unallocated money.
That's for
A
2%.
portion of that will go to the elementary school management.
That's 2%.
That's a 2%.
Yes,
What's left after
it's
2?
arguing for it.
I see what you're
But
saying.
first you were saying that you didn't want us to be the highest TLT. You know, we were putting ourselves at the highest. Now you've seen the chart and see that indeed it actually is only the middle. So I'm curious why you are concerned about being in the middle of the TLT tax rate.
Because I don't think we need it to complete the projects that we're here talking about.
I don't think we know that yet.
That's not, I mean, you know, with respect, Gary, that's not as I'm listening, that's not a statement I can support. Say that will be okay there, that we'll have enough to be able to go ahead and manage and those kind of things. I think that we'll be scrambling once we hear what the numbers are going to be, we'll be looking at all the sources in order to make it work. I think that if we were to go to one source or to go to another source, it would be okay. If we try to use all the sources of funding, I think that will put either us or a future commission in a bad spot. That'd be my concern. If we can go ahead and make the numbers work, but I don't know what it'll look like, 4 or 5 years from now, when we're trying to run it and everything else.
Your recommendations or examples of using the general fund reserve, lowering the general fund reserve contributions, lowering the RV park reserve contributions. You're saying now we're not
No,
good options?
oh, no, I think they are individually. But I did not, I said that we would put something together that says, good ideas, bad ideas, whatever, but all of it's going to be there. You go ahead and use all of those options currently used to kind of, keep funds building up, et cetera. Boom, that just dries up. And if there's any problems, we can't go to those anymore. And so that's why I don't think it's a good idea. I think 1.5% possibly. But you still. Never mind.
Are you saying that you don't think the balanced approach that we've talked about would work?
I'm saying that you can get money from each one of those sources. Everything depends on how much you're trying to take from those sources. If I said you could get 2,000 or 4,000 and you take 2,000 or 4,000 and 2,000 from another, it's over $500,000 that we currently operate within our fund that's going to be gone.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you were saying here, but I thought we had general fund reserves of $3 million.
Yes.
You're saying one option would be to reduce additional contributions to the general fund.
Yes.
So,
but
what are we in danger of there?
If you want another police officer, then, and we don't have, TLT stays flat, then we're going to need to put money from someplace else for something like that in order to be able to pay for it. And so if we have the funds from, $100,000 or $200,000 or something, we can go ahead and we can pay for another position. But if you take it,
$3 million reserve is not enough and slowing down our contributions to that.
I think that if you have a $3 million reserve, you're in good shape. I think if you take $100,000 a year from that police officer, then in a short period of time, you're going to be in trouble. So it's you, Gary, I'm just saying, you can't use all of those. You can't take all of them. Those are available individually.
Okay, now it's one or the other of the reserves.
Gary, please don't try to pin me down that way. I'm saying that all of these are possible. And to make your math work, you're taking them all.
I mean,
yeah. And so
I respect your opinion, Bruce. I'm not.
Yeah. Mine, yours too.
What's that?
And I respect yours too, but I didn't want you to misconstrue what I was saying. Yes, those are there. Those are still valuable for what the things that we do. I mean, I'd have to change my mindset here, but we probably did some of those things in order to be able to go and get, for example, the $3 million. I think we put $700,000 in towards that. We're not always going to be able to do that if we start taking away, from those funds. And maybe you'll be able to come up with an amazing way for all this to work. But I'm saying that there's some alarm bells going off for me if that's how we're going. If we use all of the funds that are possible in 2023, then those funds are no longer available in 2024.
All the funds that are possible.
Like if we were to take, if I said it's possible to take $400,000 from one and $200,000 from another, then if you take those now, those have got to be committed for 30 years. And so they're not available next time. And so your budget is down $600,000 as a result of that. Or where your flexibility is down by that much. Because it's not a one-time cost.
And even with a 2% TLT raise, we still have to raise more money for the City Hall police station.
Yes.
We're still not there.
So our general fund reserve has been averaging transferring $500,000 to $700,000 to the reserve annually.
Past 5 years I've been here, yes. There was $300,000 in the strategic plan.
And if we change that to, if we reduce that by 200,000, that's what you're recommending as an option, not recommending, but you've outlined as an option.
Consider it as an option. I think that what we put together is a good plan for a community that's going to have 3 new facilities. And we're talking about possibly a small amount to, for a referral, if voters are willing to approve it, and a TLT that doesn't put us way as an outlier. I mean, but we're going to have to spend some money. And to go ahead and say, well, we can just take it from all our existing sources, I think it's going to hamper us later.
Okay, and RV park, 300,000 a year. Is one, are you more comfortable with one of those than the other?
Or are you comfortable with taking a smaller amount?
Of each, yeah.
I think that would be a decision that would be made every year at budget time. I think if the number, if we need $242,000, I think that if we have all those sources, we could go and come up with that 242,000. And if the RV park had a capital project that went over that we wanted to get done earlier, we could go ahead and do that and then take some of the money and or not put as much money into the general fund reserve.
But if we did that, how could we guarantee funding for the bonds that we are being issued? I mean, the debt service, how do we guarantee that we will pay the debt service?
We would probably have to identify a particular source, but it doesn't mean we have to use that source. We would have to, like, we could guarantee it with the general fund reserve, with the reserve that we have, but we don't have to use the reserve. I mean, if we have it in RV park or we have it in another fund, we can do that. We would be able to come up and say, we've got the funds to be able to do this. I don't think that would be a problem, and our credit rating is very high.
So the people issuing the bonds don't say, okay, exactly how much money you're going to take out of this reserve every year to pay this debt service. They don't go that far.
I don't know. I believe that you might have to go ahead and delineate that. But if you have another source to put in instead, as long as you make the payment, I think you're going to be good. They're not going to care where the funds came from. They want to make sure that you've got some wiggle room in order to be able to go ahead and make that payment.
I'd like to hear anyone on the council's opinion on why we wouldn't want to raise the TLT tax to be commensurate with, to be right in the middle of the other communities. I'd just like to hear what your thinking is on it. I don't know
Well,
what you're thinking.
my thinking is that we need to approach this with having people groups make sacrifices. And I think a 1.5 lodging tax would be a good portion for that part of all of our little groups that are going to work together for these wonderful things. That would be, I think we could make it work with 1.5 there, a balanced approach to taking out our reserves and then a property tax.
And you feel fairness is what you're looking at. Okay, I think it's the fairest approach. Okay.
And a balanced approach so that we get what we want without
Unduly,
whacking one.
right. Okay.
There you go.
You have such a way with.
I know. Well, if I could say what I want to say.
What do you think, Randy?
Well, it's not so much a fairness, although I, want it to be fair, but I think the 1.5% can get us to where we need to be. I'm looking for the minimum number, not the maximum.
1.5 leaves us. Please correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, Bruce. Leaves us with $345,000 in annual debt service still to resolve. Some of that could come from one of the reserve contributions, whatever Bruce is comfortable with. I don't know. I was thinking he put them on the table. I thought you combine them and we're getting awful darn close.
If you have a bowl of apples, he only wanted you to take one.
Right.
And I want
If you want to have an apple tomorrow, yes.
but I want to bite a little bite out of each of the apples.
And that's my reasoning.
Okay.
I think at 1.5. Let's make it around. And make it,
You think it'll work? Yeah, okay.
that's my honest.
I would certainly like to look at a shared responsibility funding at 1 or 1.5.
And I'd agree with 1.5.
How about 1.25?
Yeah.
There we go.
And if I've got to do the math.
No. I think one. Good.
Because I'm still at 2, so.
Would you go for 1.75? Well, I feel like we also need to have a discussion about how comfortable city staff is with using the reserves. The portion that you would feel comfortable with, because that's, if we're putting 3 groups, the lodging industry, the community, and then our reserve funds. We're going with 1.5 for the lodging.
So if the difference is, the difference is 345,000. If you were to split it between property tax and reserves, I think we would be safe. We'd be taking maybe $150,000 thereabouts, 200 maybe. But so yes, I think that we would be comfortable.
And what if the bond did not pass for increasing taxes? Then where would we be? If we had a 1.5 transient lodging raise?
I would be concerned if we were going to come up with $345,000 every year out of the sources that I was talking about.
I think that would not be so easy to come up with that amount every year.
Well, as soon as you say every year, I agree. It'll be easy a couple of times, but there's going to be a time it's really going to push. And it's not going to be us probably that are here to go ahead and solve that problem, but we will have helped to create the problem.
It's probably not fair to use the $345,000 figure if we are going to apply some reserves, whatever you're comfortable with. But that may reduce it to 245 or 2.
That's what I'm saying, 152, something like that, would probably be workable.
And that's where we would need to look at other options, including lodging tax.
I mean, raising a lodging tax again?
Mhm.
Well, every time you raise the lodging tax, it's a huge burden on the lodging industry. At least that's what they told us. That it may not, I'm not talking about financial, I'm talking about the process of raising the tax. So I think if we're gonna, I don't think that using that as a future option makes sense to me. It's either you
I think
do it now or you.
I think they might prefer to have it be raised as little as possible now. If they if they had a option.
with the likelihood that it would be raised again if I don't think that doesn't make sense to me. I think if we're going to do it, we do it. And if it's 1.5, which seems to be what everyone feels comfortable with, except for me, then,
And me,
right, well, you want lower and I want higher. So
if we were to fund the $345,000 with property taxes, according to this information that Bruce gave us, it would cost for a house that was assessed with an assessed value of $500,000. Not every house is assessed at $500,000 here, some more, but quite a few less, I think. It would cost $153 annually in property tax.
and while you're looking at that,
Increase in property tax.
if we took, I don't know, Bruce, what would be a good number to say we can take from reserves? 200,000? Leaving us at 145 debt service required?
Okay, let me go back to Nancy's example. The 345 assumes that you're going to take all 345 from taxes
Right,
and not from TLT. So I would probably use the number on this, and this is the reason I gave you several options. The one that's maybe 169,
mhm.
and then the difference would be in balance. And please don't glom on to 169. It's just a number that I've got a number for. That would be more like $75. So I would say probably you're in the, well, $250,000 is $112. And then $170,000 is $75. So it would be someplace between the two.
And that's on the total 345.
Yes, because we would have TLT for the Delta.
So if we did reduce that with with one of the reserve funds, it would even be less money.
No, it's not, no, I'm sorry. I probably answered your first question incorrectly. I'm assuming we're going to split the 345 in some way.
Mhm.
And so I'm saying if you're going to be looking at property taxes, what might those be? I'm looking at something between the 170 and the 250, just to give you an idea that the number would be between $75 and $112. So
annually, right,
annually,
over 30 years.
30
or-
years.
but the TLT would still have to come and play for the other amount.
Mhm.
And we'll have to make a decision on how much is TLT and how much is taxes to be able to get ready to move forward for a referral and also to make sure that the lodging folks know what's coming. And I would suggest that I'm trying to think, I'm gonna have to talk to Lori and others. I'm not sure. As long as we've got the funds that I told you about, which is the 900,000, we've got those going into next year. I think that we'll be okay to get through November. So I don't know if we have to raise lodging taxes now. I think that we might want to wait, see how the referral does, and then make a decision on how much we're going to raise TLT, if we're going to raise TLT to make up the difference, whatever it happens to be. I don't think that if we were to go ahead and say, okay, let's do 1.11 now for the TLT and then have be turned down in the referral, we would have to go, I don't know where else we would go other than go back to the TLT again. I don't know if we have to go ahead and commit to it. I think that it's going to be, if it passes, if the referral passes, it'll be this much. If it doesn't pass, it'll be this much. And then we can move forward without having to go ahead and have a meeting like this to rethink everything. Barb, what did I miss for you?
Yeah,
How about the discussion of how much it's going to cost us to delay? Because then we would,
If we can keep going, there's no delay.
Okay.
And I think the 900 is going to cover us. I think that the bond issue that we already have for the Cannon Beach Elementary, those will cover us through that time period. But that money is at risk. Because if we decide, well, we're not going to do it because the referral fails, we're not getting that money back. Or we can get it back if we actually do a bond issue, they will repay us, or we can take funds out repay ourselves, repay our general fund.
Yeah, I understand that what you're saying. The only thing I'm concerned about is what I heard the lodging industry say is that if we raise the TLT tax, they have to have a pretty big window of time. Because a lot of people make their reservations
Sure.
way ahead for the next year. So, and then you don't want to spring it on them. Oh, well, by the way, your reservation is going to have this added to it. You want to have it up front. And so I'm concerned that, you know, the timing of it, I'm not sure how that would work.
Partly why I was advocating for a 1% now. When appropriate, if it's not going to slow us down on the projects, it's basically going to mean we're funded for Cannon Beach Elementary. Maybe haven't resolved all the management.
I think that's too risky, Gary. I don't think that's a good idea. I think one.
Better to delay the whole thing?
No, I think we should just vote on the 1.5 now. Just do it.
You're saying,
I want, as
You would
no,
prefer
I'm
we don't.
I want more, but that, you know,
and we could keep all three projects moving?
No, I would prefer that we go ahead and do it all tonight, but that's not going to happen. What I don't want to do though, is that if we're saying that we're going to collect $355,000 or $350,000 and then do a number that is, and then tell people in August, because we have to send all of our information for a November referral. We have to be done in August. And so, as a matter of fact, I think we even have to be done with some of our publicity materials. So that's going to come on us real fast. So if we go and say to the voters, it'll be this much money, and then it fails, then we're going to have to, then you all are going to have a hard decision, which I think we should decide now what we're going to do, rather than say, well, are we going to do the projects, you know, in the November timeframe. So I think that we should say, you know, if it's going to be 345, whatever is it going to be? I don't know.
I think we can figure it out. I don't necessarily think we can figure out how much of a bond we need tonight.
Right.
But I think within the next month or two, we could figure out how to get that 345.
Yes.
If everyone voted on a 1.5, if the consensus or the majority of the council votes for a 1.5 TLT increase, that 345 that has to be made up, I think we can figure out how to do that and how much of a bond we need before the August date.
I think that we can, but if the referral fails, what is the plan?
Well, we have to have a backup plan.
And that's what I'm advocating now. Everybody knows what the numbers or what's at stake. Because otherwise we'll be having a meeting like this and be talking about how much money can we get from this source, how much from this source,
Right.
how much, you know, do we want to do another impact on the lodging community? I think we need to sort this out.
Okay, so it's a difference between 1.5% and 2%. 2% means we have 242,000 we have to figure out. 1.5% means we have 345,000 we have to figure out. That is about $103,000 difference. So
If you make a decision that the difference would have to be made up by TLT, then whatever the number is, it is. Because we might even get some different numbers once we start doing the, depending on the timing of the referral and what the market is like. So I don't even know if we can say absolutely it's going to be 355 or 345. But I think we need to know that if it fails, that to complete the project and to not waste the funds that we've already just spent, that we are going to have to raise the TLT to a certain amount.
okay, well, that's why I'm in favor of having a 2% raise now.
Good.
And I don't think that it should be more, even if we need it. I don't. I think that would be the absolute maximum and that would be a done deal and you move on from there.
But if you
And-
don't, But if it doesn't, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, and if with that, whatever it is, if it's 242 or slightly more or slightly less, that we have to make up, we just have to find other places to make it up, other than if the bond was to fail. But I don't think that to sit around and, think, oh, well, we'll do 1.5 tonight. And then if that doesn't work, we can't do it with the bond. We're going to raise it more on. To me, it's the process of raising it itself is so onerous for that industry that I think we should just we raise it and leave it where it needs to be and not come back and say we need more.
Mhm.
That's how I feel about it, because that, again, that process of doing it and forming your clientele and redoing all your computer systems and all that stuff is really a huge burden. So I think we need to do it once.
Right.
Not maybe now and then come back and ask to do it later.
Right, and that's why I'm saying that maybe it's better to wait, because right now, if we do it right now, we're going into season. And if we do it in November, we're going into low season. And maybe it's going to make it easier, I don't know. But that's something that you can talk to the lodging industry about. I'm just saying that to have this much construction going and then not have an answer for what happens if your referral fails, I think that we're making a big mistake. I think that there are hard decisions to be made and we need to make them.
So what are you recommending actually here? What would you like to see us happen? That's what I'm unclear, because I thought you wanted to make a decision on the lodging tax tonight, but now I'm thinking you're thinking
Sounds like
better to,
hearing both. sides.
yeah. And now you want to put it off.
If you want to make a decision that will cover, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give the impression, I probably did, that I wanted to go ahead and get that done. But I think that we need to go into, if we're going to wait to do the TLT until we know if the referral passed or not, that means we only have to do it once. Then we have to know what the number is. If we can know what we have to make up in property taxes. So that's why I advocate that we need to know that tonight. If it's, if we go forward and we say, all right, it's going to be this plus this, and then this fails, I would prefer to be thinking, it's like, we still have time, we have plenty of energy to go ahead and figure out how are we going to make up that difference that was in the referral. But I think that if we don't make those decisions, if we don't know what the split is going to be, then the lodging community is not going to know how much, what the number is going to be in the future. If we don't know what the lodging community is going to put in, we can't tell the voters what we're going to need from them. And we have such a wild being that it might not pass. I think that having a plan now, while the sun is out and we're not pressed against being able to make an argument that, yes, we can pay these bonds, but we're not sure how. So I would want to have just a good tight plan, go into it, know what it's going to be. Everybody will know.
So what I'm hearing you say is make a decision on the lodging tax now, and then we know what we have to raise, what the leftover money we have to raise is, and then can make a decision on how big of a bond that has to be floated, right? Has to be voted on. And I don't think doing it the opposite way is actually very fair to the lodging industry. I think we need to make it, saying, well, we'll see if this passes, and if it doesn't, we're going to raise. And we don't, I just think we need to make a decision on if we're going to raise the TLT, and if we are, by how much, and just move on from there.
And here's what I was hearing. Do you need to respond to that? Here's what
Sorry,
I
no
was,
didn't seem like the right way to answer, but yes didn't either. So
here's what I was hearing from Bruce. He'd like us to come up with a funding plan that he can put in place. And if it includes a general obligation bond, wait on any increase until we really see the bottom line figures. Is that close, Bruce?
Yeah, I think so. I think the A plan is that we know how much it'll be in TLT and how much it'll be in taxes. That's great. If we've got that, we go forward. The B plan is we don't know how much we're going to have in taxes. So we know how we're going to go ahead and come up with it. So if we're going to come up with it by TLT, then we say, then the rate will be this. And so everybody knows what the rate will be when they're voting and everything else. So I think there's like an A plan and a B plan.
So we do need to make a decision on a TLT increase. And what that amount might be, not necessarily passing it. I would like to see us look at some kind of reserve contribution to that. And then you end up with a balance that's part of the general obligation bond.
Yeah, I think we got to remember there's three parts to this.
Mhm.
There's the TLT, there's tapping into reserve funds, and then there's the property tax.
Okay, why don't we let staff go ahead and work on that? Or else if you want, you can split it three ways. 345, split it three ways. But at the end, if one of the ways doesn't pass, and that's the
General obligation.
you're right, the referral, and just know how we're going to go ahead and do that. We don't have to talk about it. We just say, we already decided that this is how we'll do that. We're going to increase the amount of the reserves a little bit more and increase the TLT to make up the difference. You know, because at that point, we're spent a bunch of money.
Well, I don't think we should increase the TLT twice.
I do not
think-
disagree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But I think that we can tell them it'll be this much. If the referral passes, it'll be this much if it doesn't. And we'll know it'll be this much from the reserves. If it does pass, it'll be this much if it doesn't. And then it doesn't matter on the voter side because the voters are either going to say yes or no. Let staff bring you back something on that. I want to double check to make sure that the 345 is still an accurate number.
How long ago was this all?
It was probably a month, but
So it could change.
I don't know if there would be a big change in that amount of time. And remember, we got 6 months to go before we can make it, make the decision. Or pull the trigger on this.
So it is safe to say that we all, with some minor differences, agree that some kind of shared responsibility here that would include the TLT increase, use of reserves, and the balance, the general fund, general obligation fund, bond.
Property tax.
Let us give you some options on that at the next meeting.
That'd be good to see them.
That, everything you said, I agree with.
So that's the way we're all thinking.
That's fine. I wish we just get to a decision. We keep bouncing this thing around and I'm getting really irritated. And I'm
I
sure a
could
lot
make
of
a
other people are
decision
too.
looking at
that we
an
need to
actual
get a
plan
decision.
Bruce is comfortable with. I was taking his two reserve options and using them both. And now I hear I better hold back on that. And again,
I just think if I was, I'd want it, if I was I'm not the lodging industry, obviously, I'm sure they'd agree with that, but if I was, I would want some clarity as soon as possible. I wouldn't want to keep dragging everything on. I just,
Can't keep dragging this on. This is.
I mean, to me, I think that we have a plan now. We can come back and give you infill numbers in. So I don't see this dragging it on unless you're ready to go ahead and commit to those three numbers tonight.
But I'd sure like to see us do it as soon as possible.
I said the next meeting.
Know enough about your reserve philosophy to be able to make a decision tonight.
Here tonight.
We can't tonight. can't vote in this meeting.
Isn't this a,
It's a special.
it's a special meeting?
I know.
All hard
We
meetings.
were going to
Yeah.
adjourn and then take.
No.
No, I think, no, this is a special meeting, but I don't think,
Sorry,
we
I
have-
made
I don't,
misspoke.
that's okay, but I don't think we have.
I think we need to step back and then let us bring some information to you.
Especially on the reserve
Right.
amounts.
Can you do it by next Tuesday?
The agenda go out today?
Yeah.
If you agree to add it to the agenda,
That's fine.
if you agree to add it to the agenda.
Sorry to be here.
I won't be at the meeting, but that's okay.
Oh, no. Let's make a voting meeting at the workshop then.
There's already a voting meeting at the workshop.
Okay.
But then that would,
Okay.
it's till the 13th.
Thirteenth is
Let's
okay.
make a decision then.
Yeah, the 13th,
Really ridiculous.
the 13th.
Yeah.
That's when we'll make the decision. Okay.
So just from a date perspective, everything has to be finalized if you were to do a bond measure. Everything would have to be finalized into the county, our explanatory statement, our ballot title by August 18th. And so we'd have to do a resolution that calls for the election. That resolution would have all your information that would have to be approved, posted. So that would need to be all finished pretty much in July to have enough time for the posting. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in the beginning of August, but not much.
Okay, so nothing, then the 13th would be cutting it, but we could do it the 13th.
So do it June 13th because we still have the whole month of July, but
Okay.
things, if
That still gives us enough time.
that still gives you enough time, but things will have to move.
And anything comes from the city discussing this issue has to be looked at by the Secretary of State's office.
If you
And since they're in flux right now,
yeah, if you were to do any advertisement on anything.
yeah, so that's what hung us up in the last election.
Yeah, that could take months.
And what happened that one, they really gave us, I think the day of the election,
Yeah.
they gave us information and said, we're not sure or something like
Yeah.
that. Oh, you missed a day. So not always helpful.
Since, who knows who's going to be Secretary of State at that time? Who knows what they're doing in the office?
Okay, so we're okay with June 13th. You're going to bring us back information
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
those
We'll get the
three
information
areas. Right.
prior
right,
to it, so we
right,
can
but
really look at it, and it'll
you're
be posted, so.
Making a decision on the 13th of June. Good on this.
Mhm.
And thank you for a good conversation.
Good.
Would it be possible for me to speak just for 1 second?
Okay,
I have most respect for the conversations happening and you don't envy the decisions you're making. I would say that currently both projects are on hold. Neither one is fundamentally moving forward. The decisions we need from you to move those projects forward is that the CBE moves forward in the design it is currently in, if that's the choice, and that the police station and city hall go to one site or two sites and are authorized to move forward. So at this moment, we're limping it along. And in the respect of like, okay, we can get a geotech report, we can do some of these things because we understand enough to do that. But I just, as part of this decision, for us to really move forward and not prevent the end result of having extra money, we do need direction.
Didn't we have a meeting scheduled to talk about
This one,
that? This one?
this one.
I think we're ready to decide on siting. I don't know when is the appropriate time to make that official.
You ready?
I still have some questions about the elementary school. Our next order of business is to start to look at the use of that and what it actually is. So it's, I was trying to think of a good question to ask you. Well, what if our use changes things a bit? Where does that put us with that project? What if it changes our needs for?
Use is an interesting term because I think I use it in a building code standpoint. So could you kind of phrase your question with what specifically are you thinking?
If we get into these conversations and decide it's not event center, decide it's not a multi-use facility, But look at something else. I don't know. I'm trying not to,
Right?
is that
You mean not the
enough?
plan we have that they presented?
Possibly not the exact plan. Yes.
So
Not a visitor center or not a cultural center or what? What do you mean?
You're talking the advisory committee?
Yes.
So the task, my understanding of the task of the advisory committee is to come up with how it is going to be managed.
How it's going to be used.
No, not how it's going to be used.
Managed.
Yeah.
Used it.
Well, used in the fact of the idea of weddings or not weddings, but it has to be used as a tourist facility if we're going to use the dollars to pay for it.
51%.
Right. And the design of it, we're not,
No,
The term is.
Primarily.
primarily, right.
Substantially.
substantially, okay. But not about the task force is not making decisions about the design.
And that's my question, why I'm throwing it out there, because we may find as we discuss the use that we've got a facility that is more or less or not quite fitting that standard.
Well,
what I would say is we are exiting out of schematic design, holding to go into design development, which is really when we start to put the details together, but not the full construction documents of it. So adjustments to pieces of it are expected. Wholesale adjustment at DD would be challenging, not impossible, but it would mean we would step back probably into a schematic design phase. So if the advisory, sorry, I missed the word, board wanted to say, hey, we want to fundamentally change some this space, then we'd say, but these spaces are good, then we could keep those going. We would have to take a step back and look at the schematic piece on that to make sure it worked again. So
Probably as good as you can answer it at this point.
it's not built till it's built, things change, but the less changes you have, the more cost effective it's going to be, both on design and construction.
and my understanding of the advisory committee, and I guess I misunderstood it completely, was that they don't decide at all about design. That the design is something that's decided on by the council, and the advisory committee takes that design and decides how best to utilize it.
That's,
I'm not sure if there's that many physical changes were likely to happen. Like right now, there's 3 classrooms, there's a lobby and a kitchen space and a gym. And I don't know what kind of changes might come up that we would say, well, let's go ahead and sacrifice 1 or 2 of the classrooms or not have a gym. Those are the kind of things that would really throw us off at this point.
And I didn't mean to derail this. I just wanted to make sure that, I guess, I wanted to make sure it was clear that we are kind of in a holding pattern. And at which point you're ready for us to move forward, we'll do that. But those are the kind of decisions that we'll need to really kick off and move again.
Right, but I don't think that their decisions on how to move forward are tied in at all with the advisory committee.
I don't think that they are, and I don't think that how we pay for it is tied into it. I think that we've been on hold until council decide how it's going to be paid for, and then how we're going to manage it, those kind of things, but it doesn't change the structure. And so if we're talking about, let's get some decisions made, I would like to get direction to resume doing the design for both projects, bringing you questions as they come up and trying to get the answers for that and to let us, move forward.
I guess it's just, we're in this situation, we're a little bit cart before the horse. I mean, normally you would want to decide how you're going to use a facility. And that would lead to the design of the facility. So.
But I guess you're using use in a different way than I am, because I thought we'd already decided, okay, to use it as a community center and a tourist, something for, for tourism. So
I think that's kind of broad.
we have the, well, Right, and then the committee will hone it down exactly how we use this piece of property designed and what is the best possible use for it and cost-effective use for it, not
And
how to design it.
manage.
Yeah, and management. But design will be done. Design is done. That's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the schematic design is done.
Right.
So if we're look favorably towards what you've been shown, then that part is done. Now they're going to get into design development where they get into all the details of the spaces.
Right.
That's where we need to go now. There is a choice or a decision that needs to be made regarding the City Hall Police Station, and that is where City Hall will go.
Right.
And I don't know how you want to do that. If you just want to decide tonight, if you want to wait a little bit more time. But we do need to know, is City Hall here or there? And then we can get going on the schematic design for that project.
I'm ready to decide tonight.
Yeah, I
Is
just
it
want,
possible to make that decision with the way our agenda is written?
it's not on our agenda.
I know, that's a concern. Doesn't say anything in here about
It
siting
doesn't.
of,
I don't have it in front of me. Does anybody?
Yeah, I have it right here.
don't look at my notes.
Your doodles.
That does.
No, we might not be able to go ahead and make.
It's not, and I just want to say, I
why I asked.
letter today regarding that situation that, you know, so I think that, you know, we'd have to start addressing other information that's come in after the agenda was set.
What if we put it on the June 13th?
Yeah,
We can put it on the 13th, but if you have an indication of what it might be, that'll allow us to pick up 2 weeks.
I think there's a consensus here.
Yeah, sorry, Nancy.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but there's consensus.
I think
That hasn't,
It's the last meeting.
right, but that consensus.
Yeah.
That City Hall would be here, and the police station and emergency management actually.
I just wanted to ask you guys something, if I could. The state law saying that you have to do essential buildings that provide essential services certain ways. Is that House Bill 2605 you're talking about? Is that where the parameters were laid out for what has to happen?
My understanding of that is that bill set some parameters in place and that it then was incorporated into the Oregon Building Code
Okay,
standard, the structural code.
okay, because I was curious, just because I was trying to read through 2605 and I was having a hard time making complete sense of it, to tell you the truth.
And I don't have it right in front of me. I believe that was an amendment of a previous appendix. It has been an evolving code over the last couple of decades with several iterations. And so in my recollection of reading that bill, it talks about amending, I believe it's Appendix O, which addressed a previous bill on top of that. So there are layers here that make.
Is there is there one piece of writing that has the final parameters laid out or not?
Current building code.
Yeah, my recommendation would be the current Oregon Structural Specialty Code with current building structural requirements.
Okay, and when was that amended, do you know, or,
So that went into effect April 1.
okay,
We pull that out and send it to us.
We can look at that section,
Yeah.
pull it out.
All right, thank you.
Send it up with this.
that'd be great.
Okay, anything else before we move on? So I'd like to say something to the audience. We're going to all work together to achieve 3 structures in Cannon Beach. The rejuvenation of Cannon Beach Elementary, a police station and emergency management and a city hall. And it's going to take all of us working together to accomplish this, but I think we can do it. So put on your cooperation hats, everyone. Okay?
Cooperation hard hat.
There you go.
And can we have like a 2-minute break before we move?
And
on
then
to
we
the
have a request for a 2-minute break.
I just have a break before we move on
That
to the
was
next.
Lisa's suggestion,
Right.
but I'm going to work together and cooperate with her and allow her to have
Because
it.
she was drinking
2-minute break.
coffee all night.
And then we'll come back for a second item. But thank you, everyone. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back. Next on our agenda is appointment to the Cannon Beach Elementary School Rejuvenation Research Advisory Committee. And we established that this committee would be a 7-person committee. There will be 2 city council representatives on the committee, and that's myself and Gary Hayes. I'll be there to make sure he's not redesigning all of the buildings. And then we have 7 committee members that have or community members that have expressed interest in being on our committee. We have 1 person that has withdrawn her name. That's Nancy Littell. She had something come up and couldn't devote the time necessary to be on the committee. And so the way we're going to do this is ask each candidate to come up to the podium and just very briefly tell us why they would like to be on the committee, what they think they would bring to the committee, what they have to skills and things, experiences they've had that would help us in this advisory committee. And then we're going to come up with our 5 people. Okay? Any questions from counselors?
I do have one question. We really never set a time limit. This is an ad.
By the 13th.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. We never really did talk about, I mean, it's an ad hoc committee, obviously, so it has one purpose and doing a thing. But we don't know when we're going to get the information. Is there any discussion about when we would like to have that those recommendations?
I think it's got to have to be a short window.
Yeah.
So I would say by August 1.
That's too short, I think.
Too short?
Yeah.
September 1?
I don't know. I
It would be
hope
good if it
so.
was before the election.
True. Yeah.
So definitely
clear.
September 1 would work.
Yeah, September 1.
Okay.
Okay.
So
I'd like to move it.
I mean, I think it needs to, we need to start making some decisions. So, okay, so signing up for a couple of months of extensive work. So you got to be willing to do that. Now, anybody else want to drop out? Okay. Okay, so first on my list is Betty. So Betty, come on up.
No, not me. Okay, I forgot what you wanted me to tell you.
Betty, were you not paying attention? Okay, so you're going to briefly state why you would like to be on this committee and what skills do you think you would bring to the committee? Okay, and you're willing to get it done by September 1st.
Okay, skills. I was running a nonprofit for 15 years, and we put on it was a sustainable center where we taught people how to live sustainably, and we would do big events every year. In probably about 500 people would come to the events, and we worked in different schools, and we did a lot with the indigenous people in Hawaii. So I feel like I have a lot of background already in what I see as the vision, or I think the vision could be for the property. One of them is the Native American, the indigenous portion. it could be a learning center, a place where people could come from far and wide to experience what it was like to be living here. And also the connection to Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark survived because of the native people that lived here. So I think there's a story to be told, and I think we could tell it, and we could put our little town on the map as being an incredible place to learn about the culture that existed here before we existed here. But also, the city has a mandate to educate people on the ECFR, which is the Cola Creek Forest Reserve. And we haven't lived up to that mandate. And we also do HRAP. And so I thought those two places, those two groups could provide information, ecological information, that would help people understand what a special place this is ecologically. So with those two and the tribal influences, those could be the tourist attractions. And then the gym itself could be a place where the community did recreation. We could also have events in that in the gym. And so I just see it as a win-win to keep the Native American part of it, because to me, that's the most crucial part. And I like to work together with people to make things happen. And I'm going to put all my passion and energy into making this happen because I really believe in it. And the design is amazing. And it had a lot of community input. And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't come to that. So they didn't really see it growing. But if you saw it growing, and your own passion becomes more a light. You see the light and how it can be. So anyway, sorry, I'm not a very good speaker, but
Did it great.
I have a lot of passion.
Betty,
Wait, oh,
Betty,
you're not off the hook yet. If any counselor has questions of.
we get to grill you.
All right.
I just had one question. You mentioned this nonprofit, a sustainable center. And what capacity were you leading?
It was called the Greenhouse, and I started it in my home, and I started teaching people in the community sustainable ways to live. And then it became so popular, ended up in 15 schools in Hawaii. And so it was out of my home.
So were you a board member or?
I was the executive director.
Thank you. That's what I was after.
And we had movies every Friday night, and we'd have big dinners, and we'd have at the church, we had a sustainability week during the birthday. And so we did a lot of events. So
thank you.
Something I know how to do.
Any other questions for Betty? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have Carrie Ramey. Thank you.
Thank you. That's opportunity. And yes, we're super excited about this beautiful center that you guys have taken our vision and put into this very visual concept of what we can use as a community building tool going forward. So thank you for that. It really speaks to my passion and basically my entire career. As I've gone through my life, it has centered around hospitality, community building, leadership training, both in nonprofit and profit sectors. Started out my career with Boy Scouts of America, and they had a mandate to have an integrated program with Explorer executives to start a career education program for high school students. And so in the Seattle chapter, I was hired right out of college and became part of a team of young professionals that sought to do leadership building skills in Seattle while working with mentorship programs with businesses. And at the
conclusion of that experience, I had 120 programs that I managed and about 400 volunteers. So had a lot of fun with that, went on to marketing, and then went into commercial property management. Was part of the team at Northwest Hospital that built a 60,000 square foot medical office building, but then also reimagined the entire campus of Northwest Hospital. So I was in charge of leasing, marketing, both leasing spaces and common spaces and landscape spaces. So the whole grounds thing. So I had a lot of fun with that, worked with a lot of different people. And now in my life, we have a winery, 133 acre vineyard property right outside of Salem, Oregon, Zenith Vineyard. And Tim and I together have built 30,000 square foot winery and wedding and events facility, and have been doing that for the last 15 years. And so I'm bringing a lot of experience with building a business, hiring employees. But most of all, I think my biggest talent is the fact that I very much am interested in this particular project and going out into the community and doing a very deep dive into the space uses for this community center, and how those want to be used, need to be used. And maybe, yes, some scopes will change and broaden, narrow. What hours of use are we going to need to have? What's the size of, groups that we're going to be wanting to fit into these spaces? And how do we make that all flow together so everybody feels like they have a piece of this beautiful spot that we're going to be creating? So that's what I'm thinking, that I'm bringing my talent to this mission statement, and I'm excited to possibly move forward with it.
Any questions of Carrie?
I was wondering, at your winery, you mentioned events that you have. Besides the weddings, what else do you guys do?
So we obviously do corporate rentals. We do wine tasting events, and we do nonprofit events. We've done auctions in the past. And we've had a lot of nonprofit clients that we have entertained too. But I'm working together. I'm obviously the property, manager and owner. So I'm working with a team of maybe event planners, caterers, nonprofit organizations and their leadership. So there's a lot of collaborative type of organization that goes on. It's not just Carrie Ramey creating those things.
Have you seen your events change over the years?
Do you want to talk about COVID?
We could just leave
that. Yeah, let's just leave that out. Yes, actually, I have seen a lot of change over the years, but I think it's more of an ebb and a flow. We can go into size of events. Weddings going from 350 to 150. A lot of that is COVID related. We'll have to see whether that trend starts to trend back up again. People are spending a lot more money on events per person. So that's very encouraging. So while maybe the amount of people that show up to an event, even in a nonprofit, some of my nonprofits are wanting to pull their event back from maybe a 350, 400 person mass event to 100 person specialized. Everybody feels very, the price ticket is way up there. Tim and I just attended an event that the ticket price was $1,200 a piece to go to an event and sold out. So do you feel special? Yes, you do. And it was also a charity. So it was also, you're going to go with your checkbook open too. So there's a lot of very interesting things going on out in the event business right now.
Thank you.
And we're doing well. So I can let you know that we are recovering from COVID. So that's looking very, very positive.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next candidate is Sam Style.
Hope there's more information than what was in your email.
A bit more. As you know, I've got history with the project. I've got a long history with this site. I think you're probably more curious about events and event planning and stuff like that is in the reenacting world. I helped organize and manage reenactments. There'd be 4 or 5 a year, 800 to 1,000 volunteers per event. And then on top of that, you'd have the public that would come in and they'd be in that, depending on the location, thousands. My task generally was always logistics, set up and take down. So that's part of the logistics part of it, or the management part of stuff like that. I also worked retail in Cannon Beach for 100 years. Other than that,
Reenactments of what?
sorry, work around. I did Civil War reenacting.
Oh, okay.
And farmer's market reenactments.
Farmers market. I did help at the farmers market.
That's not a reenactment.
It's basically a big
Every week.
theatrical show. With a whole lot of complications.
Huh.
Any other questions for Sam? Okay, thank you.
Is advantage or disadvantage that we actually know who he is?
Well, next is Les Sinclair. Is there a party back there that we don't know about?
And Karen are talking, I could take one.
You want to be on it?
You want to be on the committee? He's on 17.
Mr. Chair.
Come on up.
Podium.
Let's start with directions.
Sorry, taking a break. Les Sinclair, PO Box 1394. What would you like to know?
We'd like to know why you would like to be on the committee and what skills you.
So let me do that backwards. So I don't have a lot of skills specifically related to publicly operated facilities, but I am a 30+ year engineer and with a ton of project type experience in a lot of different things, the different countries, different aspects. I think I probably could do a good job of understanding the key issues and coming up with, solutions, weighing risks versus opportunities, that kind of thing. As for why I would like to be involved in it, I think that the Cannon Beach Elementary is going to be way more valuable to this community than what the cost is. I don't even think we understand what changes it could bring to us. I think it's important. I know it's important to the tribal community. I believe that, the citizens are going to get a lot of value out of it. I think it needs the support that, whatever support we need to bring forward to do it. And I felt like I could help. But I that's pretty much it. I want to make this process move forward. And I've been very pleased with the kinds of conversations I've been hearing tonight, frankly. I think we need to do it. And I'd like to help you.
Okay. Any questions of Les?
Last year on Planning Commission and Parks.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I have plenty to do otherwise. But particularly a month ago, I felt like there wasn't a lot of people stepping up and I wanted to make sure that we had enough people to do the job. So feel free to pick whoever you want, but I'd be happy to serve if you'd like me to.
Les, while you were back there, we were talking about how many months we wanted this committee to last. And we thought a decision or recommendations to the council by September 1st. Is that I know you go back and forth to Texas quite a bit. Is that going to be a problem for you?
No, I don't think so. We don't. I mean, specifically, we don't have any plans to go back to Texas between now and then. I will go see my grandson next week in Louisiana, though. So depending on how quickly we get to the ground, maybe that, hit the ground to do the work. That might be a problem, but it's a short trip.
Okay.
No, I'm not expecting to be out of country or anything like that in that time frame.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, Andrew.
Hello, council. How much does this job pay?
Not as much as this job.
Yeah, we're gonna get the same check we get.
Yeah, twice as much as we do.
Zero times zero is still zero.
As the director of the Tolovana Arts Colony, a local nonprofit, I have experience managing a publicly owned facility, making that available and a use to the community. In that role, I have experience doing events of all kinds, big and small, from concerts to little classes to, everything in between. In that role, I know what it takes to produce an event because I'm usually the one emptying the trash, running the sound system, taking payments, we have great help from our board members, but I understand logistically how events work. I also understand from doing this job for more than 5, less than 10 years, what the demand for these kind of events is in Cannon Beach, what residents will show up for and how to get them to show up. I also have experience on the tourism side doing, and this is going to be paid with tourism dollars. So that's, going to be important. I have experience running the Cannon Beach Comedy Festival, which is tourism arts funded event, plus experience with Get Lit at the beach. And I've, worked and had hands in a lot of the other tourism and arts funded events here. And also, again, like that extends from doing the marketing, reaching people, selling tickets, operating the event. Before I came to Cannon Beach, I lived for a few years in Los Angeles and I worked in events there, mostly on tech side, running sound systems, AV, stuff like that. And that was, very much the opposite of the nonprofit, very, very for-profit, television premieres, 6-figure bat mitzvahs. I mean, the big stuff, Oscar parties. So I have experience in that world as well. I would say personally, I think more than anything, I think the most important part of this project is respect and honoring of the Classic Nehalem. That trumps it all. And I also, on a personal level, have a stake in this because I live really close. I'm not quite as close as Gary, but it's, I'm 2 blocks away and it's going to, be a part of my neighborhood. So how that, how it turns out matters to me that way too.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
He answered mine.
Thanks. Not in my neighborhood. Okay, next we have Deanna.
Hi guys, Deanna Hammond. Okay, so I spent the bulk of my career in the real estate, high-level real estate industry. So I'm very well versed in building costs of projects, what it takes to run things when they're done, putting those budgets together. I also spent a good amount of time doing something that was very fun. And I was the controller for the International Makeup Artist Trade Shows and their magazines. And we traveled all over the world putting up shows. And I ran those. So I was the office, I was the cog in the wheel. So I knew all of the costs about getting labor and putting all of those things together. From buying feminine products to make sure that everybody was good to, making sure the bathrooms actually worked. So, and you might not think those are important things when you're running a show with a lot of women. And so I also was the president of the Columbia River Mental Health Foundation. The foundation had been stagnant for about 10 years. I came in and said, we're doing this, we're putting together a fundraiser. Over the course of a couple of years with the fundraisers that we did there, I was able to assist in raising several $million for the foundation. Subsequently stepped down and we came here to Cannon Beach. So the bulk of my career spent as a controller in the building industry. I think I bring a lot to the table as far as knowing how cost project and knowing how to cost projects, knowing what it takes for electricity and all of the, just all of the ins and outs of all of that, down to the penny. I've usually been pretty good at getting within about 10 or 15% of what the actual is. And when you're working on big projects, that's pretty key to make sure that you've got your numbers pretty right on. I think it's going to be a beautiful project. I still can't say I'm not real happy about the price, but, I probably should say that there is a part of me that feels that we came to this place and this $12 million number has stayed there. And which I understand the cost. But I also can't help thinking that might be partially self-serving for the City Hall project. Because without this big $12 million project, we don't have the extra 30% from the transient dollar, the lodging dollars to put toward City Hall. And the police station, which I think the food tax actually would pay for the new police station. So, but I really do think that I could help sort of come up with put numbers together and help figure out the operating budget for that project.
Any questions?
I guess I would just ask, is there something that inspires you about what this facility could be?
I think that it would be a great facility for the community. I am a quarter Shoshone Indian, so I do understand the need for the people to understand about the Indigenous community. I think it will be a good thing for the community. I think I think only Lewis came here, one or the other, not both came to Cannon Beach. But I spent a lot being Shoshone. I spent a lot of time learning about Sacagawea and things. So I'm 6th generation Oregonian. And I think it's important that the Indigenous people have their land and or at least have it used in a way that is benefiting to them.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, and last person is Matt. I don't know who Matt is.
Did he decide to leave?
Was he the one that came up and spoke earlier? Oh, okay, I've never
I think so. I don't know.
He's left.
What's his last name?
Berga, VERGA. Is there anyone online?
Yeah. I don't see Matt on there.
He spoke earlier. I wonder if he was confused about when he was supposed to speak.
Or had second thoughts.
After the first 2 hours, he said.
That might be true, though. He might have thought that was his not.
But I told him that the council would call on him and they had questions for him.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hand up from Dave, who spoke earlier today.
Do you think Dave knows Matt? Or Matt's with Dave or?
What's his phone number? I'll call him.
Reason, I think Dave was calling or raising his hand on behalf of the tribe. We just wanted to make a little comment at the end of this process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dave's a tribe member.
Okay.
Dave?
Sorry, I was muted again. I can't seem to figure that out. So, the first thing I'd like to say is thank you so much. I am personally deeply moved by how your acknowledgement of us. And I think everyone else from the tribe feels the same way. Most of our tribal council is on this call. All of our families live there and were forced off of that land. So it's deeply personal to all of us. Sorry. So, maybe there's a role we can play in giving input to this committee. And thank you so very much.
Thank you.
So all of our meetings will be public and
Right.
public comment allowed.
Right.
So
Yeah, there'll be all
I
public
think-
meetings. So people that are interested that didn't apply can still come to our wonderful meetings by September 1st. So do we not consider that, or what's your thoughts on it? Tonight's.
He applied, I personally not support him, but
I mean, might as well.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
I know Matt, but yeah,
I don't.
other than what he submitted in writing, I got nothing beyond that, and our dogs are friends.
Well, there you go. There's a conflict of interest right there.
Okay, so heard from all of the candidates. We know that there's going to be 5 of them that are appointed to the committee. And is there anyone that would like to nominate a slate for the committee?
I have 4 people who I feel pretty strongly about that. I don't want anywhere near this. No, that I think should be on this committee. First of all, Sam, he's led this effort as mayor. I think before he was mayor, I think he should have a voice. And I know we will disagree on some things, but I think his voice is important. And he understands that it's a community vision, not just his vision. I think Betty, I was already sold on Betty with parks and her commitment to ecology, but I think some of that, the nonprofit and sustainable center work definitely pushed it over the edge to me. Carrie, I think no one kind of represents that event facility management experience, marketing, nonprofit. It just seems like that's an angle that would be welcome on this. And then Andrew, event experience, managing public facility, arts community, and he's a slightly different demographic
Yeah, younger.
than most of us.
Quite a bit younger.
Yeah, I think that would be.
So still leaving one position open for your thoughts. I'd like to nominate Sam Stidel, Betty Guerin, Carrie Ramey, Andrew Tonry to serve on the Cannon Beach Elementary School Rejuvenation Research Advisory Committee.
well, I'd love to second that, but we need one person.
I know.
Have less.
We can pass this and then choose from our remaining candidates. It was my thought, unless someone else has 2 candidates they really feel strongly about.
First, we need a second because we have a
I'll second.
motion. Okay. And then discussion of how we can proceed if we want to vote for those 4 and then have a separate motion for the one additional person.
I think if we agree with those 4, let's just get them on board. And
And then we
then
have a committee
consider-
of 6 or.
No, and then-
Consider the, okay.
yeah, and I would like to hear from other people and remaining candidates or who you might feel strongly about.
Well, I agree with all the candidates. I was just going to add Les Sinclair. So if you'd like to modify your motion.
Wait a minute, I just would like to say one thing, and I think Les would make an incredible addition. I just was thinking that, he sits on 2 commissions already, and I just was trying to think of a way to include more people. Whether or not I necessarily agree with all their points of view or not really is not relevant to me. It's just being more inclusive, and I don't know. I mean, Deanna is smart and she has some experience and she has come to a lot of meetings and participated. And again, I might not always agree with her points of view, but I don't know. I mean, that's just all I was thinking is that, Les is really involved in this community on a lot of different commissions and even committees, I think. So I want to make sure that we include as broad a base of people as possible. I'm not sold on anyone in particular. I'm just saying that should be a consideration.
Nancy, do you have any?
Well, I would support Betty, Carrie, and Andrew, and Les. I want to make sure that the topic stays on the operation and management of the center and not how it's being funded in the first place. That's the real concern I have, is that
And the design.
discussion and the design. Yeah, I don't think the design, and I don't think that the underlying funding for the center should be part of the discussion. We're looking at only use and management of it, and I hope that doesn't get into the way of
And
it.
you think maybe if a couple of the candidates will sort of have a hard time staying on task,
Exactly.
those two things.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll make sure that those conversations are out of this.
Yeah, I think we need to stay away from that. We've had plenty of discussion about that.
And
I agree with you totally about Betty, Carrie, and Andrew completely. And I really, the other two candidates, I'll just go along with the majority. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I feel like that. I think Les would do a great job.
I think,
Great job.
I think the other part of your comment is that I think the entire committee needs to understand that this is a tourism facility. It needs to be effective as a tourism facility because of the funding. So I just add that when we're talking about the funding, I can't remember the term that we agreed on for what that facility should be. Substantial. Yeah, thank you.
That would be the word of the day.
So Dick had his hand up earlier.
You want to volunteer for the committee? Do like
I do
just quick.
say something very quickly, and that is that, first of all, I think we're all family here.
We argue like it, we might as well be.
With that, there's been such an emphasis to put a tribal story with the site. But yet, I've asked, well, no one on the planning committee from the tribal side knew about this advisory committee. And it would seem like if there was so much emphasis on put on designing it with the tribal flair, the tribal story, that it might be a good idea to have a slot or somebody on this committee that would be from the tribal.
So I think I can answer that. We're not changing. This committee is not tasked with changing the design or the tribal influence. And I will, as a member of the committee, I will protect that. And they're public meetings, and I would hope that we would have tribal representation at all the meetings, not necessarily as a committee member. And we're also just an advisory committee that will come back to the council with their findings.
But I
We're not,
I can understand what Dick is saying though. I mean, even when you look at the, for instance, the outside and how that's going to be used.
Or who are you going to get to fill an event or have an event or interpret the garden or anyway, I just had to say that I thought that there needs to be tribal input into the what's going to happen within this facility that the tribe has had such a big part in. So what I'm saying is, how much time is it going to take? No.
Would you be willing to throw your name in the ring?
I would be willing to throw my name in the ring. And maybe substitute with another tribal member, you know, that met with your approval. But that's meeting with, I guess I've said my piece, and go ahead and deliberate.
Well, I think we could either add another person to the committee who is a representative of the tribe or substitute in a member, one or the other. But I think we can do it.
Two things. Are there some requirements about who can serve on a committee like this?
in terms of city residency.
Yes.
I don't think so.
When it's an ad hoc.
I don't believe so because it is ad hoc, because it's not a like city sanction ordinance type of thing.
Right.
And my other concern would be that we had a public process. And we've got applicants.
Except that the tribal members aren't looking at our website all the time because he said, they weren't even aware that this committee appointments were happening. And it is a responsibility of people who live in the city to keep up with the website, but not people who don't live in the city.
Could we have a tribal member as an ex officio?
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope.
Yeah, I think so.
Representation at every meeting and that we hear from them at every meeting.
I if Dick could serve as an ex officio member so that we have that direct contact with the committee.
Would that work for the tribal, always have somebody here at the meetings? I mean, we're only talking till September.
No, but
Not signing your life away.
Sounds like it's a addendum. You know what I mean?
Well,
Doesn't have a
contact.
I know, but I just think that why can't we add another person or?
Well, I think Gary has a good point. There is the public process.
Public process. We changed the public process already once because people didn't feel like they had enough notification. But I think we have to.
How would they have known?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, why would they come to our council meetings or keep
Because they're
track
so
or
much
look
fun.
at it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we've got nominations and a second on the floor. Is it possible for me to just amend my nomination to add Les Sinclair?
Okay, but then I still think we need to address the tribal representation. Why don't we just say we're going to have an additional representative from the tribe present at each.
Yes, I like that. I second that.
But not a member,
No,
A member.
well,
because we'd have to change the resolution.
I know.
oh,
Yeah. And keeping in mind that it is an advisory committee that will bring their recommendations back to the city council. Everybody okay with that?
Yes, I hope we have that input.
So how is this person being described? If it's not a member, it's a advisory.
but it is an advisory committee anyway. So an advisory to the advisory committee?
Advisory to the process of what the.
Well,
committee
I think we
recommended.
should just have another member of the committee and have it,
But
the
it's-
tribal member.
But then you said we'd have to change the resolution.
You'd have to change the resolution.
Okay, well, then just take out one of the people we picked and put the tribal member in.
Then we haven't honored our process. And it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with the issue talking about the process that we've used.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the people who did apply.
I'm gonna throw out an idea here as a fellow rule breaker and being on any committee. It's amazing what an advisory committee can decide within themselves to. I personally trust that the advisory committee will bring on somebody in good faith. If it can't happen today, I don't think we're here to stop the process. We're just here to interject ourselves. So
at our first meeting of the committee, we could,
you take rules.
That's right.
You bring on-
So
so we're not breaking them, we're making them.
go ahead and go with, the people that you've decided that I just. It just, something didn't seem right. It just didn't seem right. And I was trying to, I guess, make a point. That's why I said we're all family here. I or somebody else, if we can attend, we would like to be there.
Okay,
Because we want to follow this thing through,
understand.
but for some reason, we were not part of this process, and I don't know how we missed it. We've been in a lot of meetings. So,
I hope there's a representative at every meeting, and I think you're going to be well represented by this committee after hearing from Betty, from Andrew, my own personal feelings. I could probably mention others, but I'm not going to put words in their mouth.
thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on the nominations? Okay, do we roll call?
Yeah, I'll roll call. Just for clarification, when we amended the motion, are we just amended to add Sinclair, or did you want to amend to include having a tribal member present at each one? What Barb had said.
Well, I'd like that amended if you're agreeable.
Do you like that?
Yeah, that's fine, sure. I have no problem with it at all.
Okay, then yes.
Okay, I
Adding,
just put a picture. I will add that in.
So we're all clear what we're voting on.
Could you read the motion?
Okay, so Gary, let me see, because I just wrote he amended. So Gary moved to appoint Sam, Betty, Carrie, and Andrew to serve on the Cannon Beach Advisory Committee, But then we amended the motion to add Les Sinclair and a tribal member to attend the meeting for input purposes.
Okay. Very
I think it worked.
spoken.
yeah, I really did a good job at that one.
And then we had a second.
And Brandon seconded.
Okay.
So are we ready for roll call?
I hope so.
Okay, Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Kerr,
Yes.
Councilor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
And then when we do these committees, we'll have to post them as public meetings, and I'll make sure I email Dick and the committee or the tribe. So whenever we post anything, we'll include you on it.
Thanks. Okay.
And we didn't need to make an omission there. We'll take care of it. Okay. Good of the order.
So we are gonna have a quick conversation with Bill Weisman. He is on Zoom right now.
Bill, yes.
Yeah, he went to sleep.
He said he has a live stream up, so he probably will be.
Well, while we're waiting for him to, Kevin, do you want to talk about just the July 4th?
Yeah, so July 4th is only Tuesday.
And it's the first Tuesday.
It is the first Tuesday of the month. So would you like to have our first meeting on July 5th?
I won't be here on July 5th, but that's fine.
Are you able to Zoom or are you?
Well, it'll be 3:00 in the morning where I am, but I can try.
Getting home. That'd be fun.
I can try. Seriously.
Okay, everybody okay with having that regular meeting on?
I am.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, and then because Lisa's not here, we'll keep that into consideration when we're looking at items that would be here. We would just post to follow.
Okay.
I already had it on the 5th.
I had it on the schedule as 5th.
Okay.
Yeah. you're just
Okay, and Bill's
formally.
actually getting on Zoom right now.
Oh, I do too. Good evening, Bill. Good morning, Bill.
Jumping on here. Hold on a second. There it is.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you allowing the quick entry into this and bringing this good of the order item up. I believe you're aware, I wanted to give you a quick update on the Roberts hearing that is scheduled for June 7th. And as most of you know, we typically provide a staff report that's required by state law 7 days in advance. And we have run into some hiccups finalizing that staff report. And so what that means is that we're likely going to have to either postpone or continue the meeting that's scheduled for June 7th. I'd like to give you a quick update about that and then talk about dates that it can be continued to.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Jenna, you're gonna ask about dates?
Well, do we want to have the discussion on continuing it or scheduling a new date?
And in the email we received, you gave us a couple of options. And so we need to decide what we want to do with those.
You seem to recommend going forward with the 7th meeting, the meeting on the 7th, and then continuing from there.
That's correct. It avoids having to renotice, and we think there's at least some probably some people in the public who are aware of well, we've already sent out the notice. So obviously there are people in the public
Right.
aware of the hearing on June 7th. And so the idea would be to go to the June 7th meeting and continue it from there to a date certain. We would also, in the interim, if the let people know who had received notice that is the expectation that the continuance would occur on June 7th. And the real issue for the council to consider is whether to allow testimony on June 7th or just continue the matter and wait and have people wait to provide testimony until the staff report is available.
Well,
Bill, I would think that it might be somewhat problematic if we allowed testimony without having to notice properly.
So the notice would be proper. The issue is whether the staff report would be available, which would give, staff's view on the material that had been submitted and whether it's consistent with the code or not. And, that's really what's driving this continuance, is that we want to make sure what we get to you is 100% correct and, is complete. And we just weren't able to get there. And so, I expect there are some people who are going to have their opinion regardless of what information they may have or may not. But I think the best course is probably wait for the staff report and then allow people to testify after that's available.
so what would happen on the 7th?
It would be a short meeting where you would basically convene the meeting, say we're continuing, have a motion to continue, and presumably that would be approved. And then we'd move to whatever the date of the continued hearing.
How soon can the staff report be generated?
So in part, we're having some consultants look at some issues, and I don't want to get into the merits at all, but I would suggest 2 weeks would be an appropriate time to allow for that to be done.
From today?
From June 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when I'm gone, so.
And I'm completely booked up that week,
Okay.
at least at 6 o'clock. I mean, I can do it early in the day, during the day, but I can't do it at that night.
So we're looking at like June 21st, that week.
And I'm not here then either. I'm not here the week of June 20. I'm on a trip that I planned before I even ran for council to
And how-
Normandy
Oh,
and paid for before I ran for council.
We can go with you, you can have the meeting there.
Yeah. And the fact is I've done so much
I know.
work and spent so many hours on this issue that I want to be part of this meeting. And I thought I was in the clear. And now I'm finding out that I'm not as of today. So that really concerns me. And I could, the 10th of July would be the first time I could be there.
Oh, boy.
Bill, are we under any time deadline in terms of the 120-day rule or anything like that?
Yes, the applicant requested a continuance or asked the city to move forward in, I believe it was late April. Essentially, the 120-day deadline restarts on the remand when the applicant requests the city to move forward. And our deadline is late August. I want to say August 26th or 27th, somewhere around there. So, and because this is the initial evidentiary hearing, there would have to be an opportunity to either keep the record open or continue the matter. If we were to move it to early to mid-July, say July, 11th or 12th, at a minimum, we'd have to have 21 days in which to allow continuance, which would take us to early August. The council would then have the opportunity to make its final decision in early August, and we could bring a decision draft findings back to you in late August. So that would, early to mid-July is still easily doable, presuming no further hiccups along the way.
And that rule doesn't apply. If they decided they wanted to appeal a decision to LUBA, that 120 days doesn't count toward LUBA. does it?
No.
You're right. It's only for the city to make its final decision.
So could we do it on July 11th then?
We already have a meeting on July 11th.
I was going to suggest July 10th.
10th?
Just so you know, we also have a meeting on July 12th.
I know.
Right.
That's why I didn't
have that.
suggest July 12th.
The 10th?
Mondays aren't normally good for Nancy.
What's that?
Mondays aren't good for you.
Oh, they're fine.
Oh,
Yeah, Monday night's fine.
So the 10th?
would Monday the 10th?
Or we could do it Thursday, the 13th.
Thursday,
Either way, we're going to have three.
The 13th is booked in the council chambers from 5 to 8.
Okay.
So the 10th?
It sounds like it is.
So we're looking at July 10th?
So the 7th and then the 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a short meeting on the 7th where the council continues the matter to July 10th at 6 p.m. And then we reconvene on July 10th.
Okay.
So we'll have a short meeting to make up for the long meeting that we'll have on the 10th.
And then I'll work with Bill tomorrow. We'll draft up something to send to the parties of record and anyone who's already submitted us information to let them know what our intentions are.
Okay. That work for you, Bill?
That works, and I apologize, especially to Councilor Kerr. I know her involvement and interest in this, and we want to make sure we get it right, and we want to make sure we do it in a way that works for all members involved, all citizens involved in this.
And she'll be here on July 10th. So
Yes.
that's taken care of.
So we have meetings on July 10th, 11th, and 12th. Okay.
Yes.
Bring our jammies and our.
Okay.
And maybe on the 13th, who knows? Okay, thank you. Bill,
Thank you.
anything else for good of the order?
How are we gonna schedule the first meeting of the school advisory committee?
So we basically need to throw out some dates and see what works best. Are there preferences with you two that we can start with? And then I'll email the whole group and say, do any of these dates work?
Why don't we do that after the meeting?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be a nighttime. Be a day meeting too.
good.
Good, depending. Okay, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Good of the order.
Could you let the rest of us know when that meeting
Oh, sure.
is, so that if we wanted to zoom in to watch it, we could?
As long as you're quiet,
Huh?
as long as you.
Oh, yeah, can't say words, but like to watch.
Okay,
Also be on the agenda list. It'll pop through the whole agenda notification.
Okay.
great. Okay, thanks, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.